All right, we got Keith Hernandez joining us on this episode of the Shea Anything Podcast. The Mets, as we're recording right now, have won 7 games in a row. It seems like a quiet winning streak. We'll get into that. We're going to listen to a very fun soundbite between Gary and Ron behind Keith's back. We're going to talk Matt Harvey, some Pete Alonso, some Francisco Lindor. It's all coming up on the Shea Anything Podcast. It starts right now. Welcome to the show, everybody. A reminder, subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you're listening. If you just downloaded this episode, we'd appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. That helps us out. And if you like the show, please give us a review on the podcast app. Shea Anything, by the way, brought to you by Verizon, 5G built right for the Mets from the network. More people rely on only on Verizon. Keith, you were not part of the Orioles series, the midweek series at Citi Field. You'll now be in the booth for the series against the Rays, correct?
Yes.
So while you were gone, of course, Gary and Ron just had to have a little bit of fun at your expense. I'm wondering if you've heard this. If not, either way, let's take a listen to it.
Obviously, we're going to be doing that game remotely. It is hard enough when you're in the ballpark there to figure out like what's going on and which ring is which and which one's in fair territory and which one's in foul territory. Not sure how you do it on a monitor. But I'm sure Keith will figure it out.
Yes, he will. He will. He's got 3 legal pages of notes already. You know how he comes in with that yellow legal pad. He's ready.
Well, it's not September yet, so that means that it's not his college football picks on the legal pad.
So we were talking about this before we started recording. A legal pad means yellow paper, right? And that's what you use for your notes?
Yes. And I also put notes also on my scorecard.
And during college football season, you go through the Saturday slate on a legal pad and make your picks?
I certainly do. Big long one, not the normal size, because there's so many college games. I need I need the long one.
Are you good at picking college football games?
No, not really. I just have fun, a little nickel and dimes just to have a little interest. Nothing where I'm, 15 grand in the tank, and I don't go there. Trust me, I do not do that. So I'm like your typical average guy that, puts $10 here and shakes it around a little bit.
I have no luck with college football.
It's hard.
I find that in order to make a real educated guess at how a game's going to end, you have to watch a lot of the games. And
you have to study and do statistics and keep track of injuries.
Yep.
And homecoming games, homecoming dogs. I mean, there's so many. I mean, I've talked to some serious people that play seriously, and it is a job for them. It starts on Saturday night after the games are over, and they all through the week. I couldn't do that. I mean, it's just crazy.
So I want to let's start with a 3-batter rule. Did you hear what Matt Harvey had to say after his start yesterday, Keith?
I did not. I was up in Gettysburg while you were in Africa. So I spent 4 days, my 4 days off in Gettysburg. So I have yet to watch the 2 games, but I got MLB TV, and I'm going to fast forward through the commercials, and I'll be able to see. But tell me, what did he say?
Well, so, obviously he didn't pitch great, but the headline, I guess, was that he got a standing O from the Citi Field crowd. And he was really honest and raw about how that felt and the emotions that brought back. And kind of like, he acknowledged that he was kind of curious if they were going to cheer or boo, and he was really glad that they went the cheering route. And I think that was the right decision from Mets fans. I'm not sure why you'd boo. I know there were some issues at the end there, but I think generally he brought a lot to some bad teams, especially in 2013. And what did you think about him returning? What what thoughts come back to your head when you think about the what's happened to him ever since his kind of peak stardom in 2013?
Well, I think of Matt, and I just think of he wanted to be something, and it didn't happen. And I think in terms, but when I really think about him, I think about these pitchers coming up, and I think it's changing. Taijuan Walker said in the paper this morning that they've been playing great defense behind me. I pitch to contact. I want to keep the ball in play and get the inning over as fast as possible and go deep into a game. We went through a hole in the 90s when that steroid crap was going around, and then the 2000 when we got to 2000, and everybody to throw 110 miles an hour and a 95 mile an hour slider, and that was Matt Harvey. Your arm can't hold up. Your elbow is not going to hold up throwing a 95 mile an hour slider. And to see Matt pitching now, I did watch a little bit the highlights. I saw him pitch it before. He's moaning. He's pitching to contact now. He's not the overpowering pitcher. And I just wonder if today's pitchers that have been hurt and are older now can look back and wished that they had learned to pitch. Instead of throwing 100, throw 97. Instead of the 94 mile, 3 mile an hour slider, the 90 mile an hour slider. And if they would have lasted longer and learned how to pitch, because they're backing off that little bit, they've got to locate better. So that makes them have to be more precise with their pitches, which makes them be pitchers instead of throwers.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways in which Harvey has grown up. There's the on the mound aspect where he's no longer the pitcher he once was. He's kind of a sinker baller now, Keith.
Yeah.
To your point, pitching to contact, he's a different guy. But also, I think he's been humbled. And Andy, there's Haji. Andy and I talked about this earlier this week. He acknowledged that he's been humbled by all the difficulties that he's gone through ever since his peak stardom, ever since the end of the 2015 World Series. He's been one of the worst statistically starting pitchers in baseball. That was what I gathered from yesterday. I don't know if you remember this or if this stuck out to you. I don't know why it stuck out to me so much, but when he was really struggling with the Mets, 16, 17, 18, that whole phase, he would give up like 5 runs in 5 innings. And then the reporters would be at his locker and they would say, how did you feel about this outing? And you'd expect him to be like, it was not great. I expect better of myself. And instead he would say things like, I really felt like I got out of the 4th inning without allowing too many runs. And you were like, don't you expect better of yourself? Like, aren't your expectations higher than that? And it made me feel like maybe he was kind of grasping at straws in terms of looking for the positives in everything. And last night, he just seemed like he knew exactly how everything went down. It was a total self-awareness on his part that I'm not sure I had seen since kind of he fell from grace, if you want to call it that.
So when he was asked, did he say that he had a bad outing? I mean, it was a bad outing.
Yeah. He was like, obviously it didn't go the way. Yeah. He's like, obviously I wish the score was reversed.
To me, I mean, all these mental skill coaches that are psychologists, basically, that, give out the trophy for finishing in last place, something good on a bad outing. Okay. At least I got out of the 4th inning. It could have been worse. That's crap. I had a bad outing. I gave up 7 runs, and even though the guy came in and gave up 3 of his runs, inherited runs, he still would have given up 4 runs in 5 innings. It's not a good outing. You can't, I won't say that, can't polish a blank.
One of the other interesting things that he said was somebody asked him, given the way the injury, the thoracic outlet, everything that followed 2015, you remember when Scott Boras came out, it was like, my client's not going to throw more than whatever it was, 80 innings.
Right.
And so somebody asked him yesterday, when you look back, do you think that was worth it to pitch that deep into the postseason, pitch into the World Series, Game 5? Like, he threw a lot of innings. And he was like, I don't even want to talk about that. That run was worth it. I wouldn't take anything back.
Right.
And, it was interesting. We had Terry Collins on the 6:00 show last night after the game. And Terry told the story of when Boris got involved, Terry sat all that rotation down, which was, Matz and Syndergaard and Cologne and DeGrom. And he was like, what do you guys think about a 6-man rotation? Let's do it. And Harvey was the first guy who was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I just want to pitch every 5th day. So it was just look, I thought that yesterday it almost felt like closure. I know that he still wants to be great and he'll probably get traded at the deadline somewhere. And maybe he's going to try and make something of his mid-30s in his career. But yesterday really felt like kind of Mets closure in terms of his story. And it's as fascinating a story as we've had on the Mets in the past decade.
Well, yes, and only in New York, where there's all that spotlight. And he was like a comet. I mean, he had his moments and did some good things and was controversial. And I think that, you look back, and all the lost opportunities, the mistakes that you made when you're older. And once that's done, there's no bringing it back. So I don't know. I just blame baseball a lot for, these kids today. They can't get drafted if they're not lighting up the gun. And I'm sorry, there's people that don't throw hard that can get people out. If they know how to pitch. And I think we got away from that, and I think we're slowly getting back to it. Where pitchers are pitching more inside, more upstairs. The hitting is way off. So the hitters now have to make the adjustment. And you find that Bryant and the guy with the Angels, the greatest player in the game,
Trout.
They've changed their swings. They've had to alter their swings. This launch angle and swinging up isn't cutting it. And you can look up and down the team batting averages, team total batting averages, and they're way down. And it's up to the players now to make the adjustment. I've been screaming about it and tooting my horn on the air for 3 years about it. And the pitchers finally, in their infinite stupidity, finally caught on how to get hitters out. Took them 3 years of rockheads. I
will say also that some balls this year off the bat that I think are home runs are dying at the warning track. So
Good.
if they did, change the baseball back, that certainly leads you to believe that something's changed. So while I was in Africa, you were in Gettysburg. The main highlight that I thought of you when I saw it was, let's see, yesterday was Wednesday, so this would have been Tuesday. The way the game ended on Tuesday was basically Jonathan Villar and Kevin Pillar were the storyline. It was the Mets' depth. And Villar is another rarity in today's game, Keith, where when he gets on base, you watch closely because him being on first base means probably guaranteed second base. He'll steal it. And he's just so good at navigating the bases. And that's something the Mets were so bad at last year. How impressed have you been by, to use your term, the good fundies on this team? The fact that they're not winning games 12-9, they're not knocking the cover off the ball. They're just a good fundamental team right now.
Well, the VR has never played well against the Mets, and this is our first chance. You can't judge a player unless you watch him every day. I only see the guy 6 games because there's not enough because of interleague play. I mean, I see the Dodgers for 6 games in the course of a year. How am I going to evaluate that player in 6 games when it's just 3 and then maybe they play a week later and it's 3 more? I could catch one player in a slump or he could be red hot. But now that we've had a chance to watch VR could play every day even at his age. And he has been absolutely phenomenal. He's played very good with the glove. He's stealing bases. And he's a good base runner. He scored the most impressive thing. What's his name? Mazika.
Yeah.
Got 2 RBIs. He hit the ball maybe 100 feet. He's got 2 RBIs, right?
Yeah. What did Gary call him? The king of the walk-off fielder's choice.
It's incredible. The ground ball to the first baseman where Villar scored. I had to watch that 3 times on the highlights to play back to see where the third baseman was playing. I was saying, how did he score on that ground ball? I had to check where the first baseman was, and the first baseman was in. He didn't charge the ball. That was his mistake. And Villar wasn't the third baseman was 10 feet off. Remember, we've seen third basemen when a potential squeeze situation stand on third base to hold the runner tight. Well, they were 10 feet, 12 feet off. And as a base runner, as far as the third baseman's away from you, that's how big your lead can go. And then another step, because he can't beat you back if you're the equidistant from the base. Follow me? Mm-hmm. You could take an extra step.
Yeah.
And Villar did not have a lead where they allowed him to get, a quarter of the way down the line. That ball wasn't hit that softly. The first baseman's mistake was not charging it. And even if he made a good throw, he was going to be safe, I feel. But he got such a great jump on contact. And that's coming down the line and being alert. And I think that's what he's brought. He's taken in the extra base. And I think the young players have noticed this. On top of that, now we got Lindor getting on base, and he's starting to steal. And what about all these analytics guys that said stolen bases are phooey? I'm sorry, they're wrong. It puts pressure on the defense. You got a guy, you've got to make it what would they have it down to a percentage, 80% success rate, or else it's no good. I think that's high. But with our guys stealing at the right time, you just can't collectively, the end of the year, go, well, we stole it. It's when you steal the base and when you're successful. You got a good pitcher. I stole 19 bases in 82. I would either steal early in the game or I'd steal late. I'd either put them asleep, because you can sleepwalk and steal 20 bases and they don't know it. Or I'd steal if it's Carlton and it was up against Andujar, or Doc up against Carlton. It might be a 1-0 game. If I got on base in the first inning, I'd steal, try to get in scoring position, because that get it early. And if I didn't feel right about it, I would hold back till if I got on late in the game, if it was close, and then try to steal that bag. So it's when you steal. And the fact that they've been successful doing it, I mean, Villar is just a good player. I mean, he's a good player. And I think he's setting a great example. And I think things are just starting to click. And the players get injected with energy when you have a player like that doing that. And the fact that he's a veteran in his 30s, well, hey, I'm 23. I better get my butt moving, right?
Yeah. Well, you're so right. He was so bad against the Mets last year, like shockingly bad. It seemed like every time he came up in a big spot or the ball came to him in the field, he made base running mistakes. And I remember thinking, this guy has had a very successful career. He's got pop and he steals bags to a point where he leads the league. There's something that I'm not seeing. And then when he became a Met, it's become very clear. Keith, I'm sure you'll agree. One of the things that annoys me about baseball today is that there are a lot of great athletes who don't know how to steal bases, so they don't. Like, Brandon Nimmo, for example, has the speed to steal at least 20 bags a year.
Yes, he should be able to steal 25 bases a year.
Right. He's a great athlete, but it's just not part of his game. It's not something he's focused on. Villar, it's not even about his speed. He's just a professional base stealer. So when he gets on first base, it's fascinating to watch, because I doubt he's even looking at the signs. I bet Rojas has told him, like, look, you know better than I do. Pick your spot and go. And that's really fun to watch a pitcher deal with. I mean, Harvey had to deal with it yesterday, and Villar ended up stealing it on him easily. And remember, he's the guy who caught Rhys Hoskins and the Phillies napping and went from first to third on that play. He scored on that play.
Yes, he scored on that. They fell asleep.
He's just like, I mean, I've watched you dissect bad Mets base running now for years. And I feel like his head's just always on a swivel. And he's just always watching the ball.
Yep.
And that's just, I don't know, it's fun to watch. I feel like I learn when I watch him play.
I
What
think
about-
that this team right here is probably the most of the years I've been doing in the booth. This is the most professional team roster that I've ever experienced with me being in the booth covering this team. They answered the question. Conforto today talking about everybody, the press. They scored all the runs yesterday, and they're giving the press, of course, writing about the new hitting coaches. And Conforto was right there saying, "Well, this was the past two guys." They mentioned them by name: Chile, Slater, Tom. They were much aware of it too. And I think what happens sometimes when you have a shakeup like that, the Mets were in a doldrum. And when you shake it up like that, and the guy was well liked, it also shakes up the players. I think it was a wake-up call. And I think that was probably part of the philosophy by the general manager in making the move. And I think there was other things involved that he wasn't happy with. But I think ultimately, and I think Alderson had a play in this too, is that, okay, they fired a hitting coach. I'm hitting 170. I'm not driving in runs. I better get. I think it woke the team up, and because you can kind of get into a mode where you're just moping and kind of wallow. You can wallow in your self-pity, or the team can wallow in it together. And this was like a shock treatment for them, and I think it woke them up.
We spend a lot of time when they signed guys like Pillar and Almora wondering where they're going to play, where they're going to fit. Is that part of why you think this is the most kind of fundamentally sound professional team? Because when someone comes out, it's not a rookie. It's a legitimately proven big leaguer who can slide right in, give you professional at-bats, and play good defense right away.
Well, we were praising Sandy because it was Sandy in the offseason, because there was a long time He was the general manager. He made all the moves, and he made the moves to strengthen the bench, the veterans he brought in. And we were in spring training from the beginning. We were saying this is the best bench the Mets has had in a while. Yes, there's veterans here, but McCann is a professional. Pillar is a professional. Villar is a professional. They handle themselves so well, and they handle the media. They answer the questions in the media so well. Before, a lot of guys just are either were nervous, intimidated by the media. This group is very self-assured, has good self-esteem, very confident, and they've been around the block. Our interviews with them, we do those interviews in game in the past. I dreaded them because they're just fluff. We get nothing. It was just filling airtime. But these players give us information. And I'm a player. I know when someone's blowing smoke, and these guys, when we do our sideline interviews, they're wonderful and they don't make excuses. And I just think that this is a great group, and that really Sandy put together. And I think it's got the sky's the limit. They can go forward together and be a team that could have a decade like we did in the 80s. I really feel that way.
Well, so I was about to say, I feel like part of what you're saying is like you value the personalities of these guys, the questions that they answer so much, because that's something that those teams in the 80s were so good. Like the personality of that team was so important. Is that part of why you're saying that that's so key to this team? Because you know that the group and wanting to play together and answering questions the right way is something that can lead to bigger and better results?
Well, I think, we're talking, 35 years ago, right? The 80s. So it was more the Wild West back then. The players today are much more conformists. I think the 60s bled into the 70s. They were kind of rebellious, and baseball is a microcosm of our society. The players were rebellious and grew the long hair, the mustache, where it was unheard of in the 60s and then into the 70s. In the 80s, it was still there. It didn't start changing until the generation started coming in around 2000. And I think they're more, everybody's more.
They're polished.
Not so much polished. I just think that you couldn't mold an entire team together the way management would want it to be back in our day. They can today. They can do that today. And I can't put my finger on it, but I think they're much more malleable for whatever reason. And it's a good thing. Because a lot of guys blew their careers. A lot of guys didn't take care of themselves, and these guys are dedicated. So they put the work in. I couldn't do it. I mean, I couldn't come to the ballpark at 12 noon. I could not hit like these guys hit all day long, 4 times a day. I get in a hot streak. The Lord only gives you so many days, so many swings red hot. I do not want to waste them at 5 o'clock, let alone 3 o'clock. So
you'll take the couple extra hours of sleep.
Well, I was red hot. I'd take 1 round of hitting in BP. I just go and get my bunt, hit and run, take 8 swings, 10 swings, maybe take a second round of 8 or 7, get out. I felt good. I don't need any more. I'm ready to roll.
Yep. Once again, you're listening to the Shea Anything Podcast, which is brought to you by Verizon. It's 5G built right for the Mets from the network more people rely on. Only on Verizon. Okay, third of the 3 batter rule, Keith. Let's talk Francisco Lindor. You mentioned that he's stealing bases. Do you see, even in the highlights that you've watched, a more confident player? How do you think he went from 0 to 60 in terms of feeling like he could hit a baseball at the plate again?
I thought the last game in St. Louis, he started coming around. He started taking the ball. He's been flying what I called it his bohunkus, his fanny out, right? And that's because he was too quick. And he started taking pitches better. And then I was worried that when they came back from St. Louis, they had an off day. He needed to play. But the game Monday, when did they play? It was a weekend series, right?
Yeah, because they were off Monday.
So Friday, when they came back from St. Louis, they played Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I thought each day got better. I thought the turnaround started that last game in St. Louis, and he's starting to take pitches on the outside corner better. He's not pulling and as much. And the fact that it's not surprising that he's stealing bases, that's part of his game. He got over 100 stolen bases in 6 years. So Haji
really, if I didn't know any better, I would think that was a newborn. There's something.
I was in Gettysburg for 4 days. He was alone, and my neighbor feeds him 3 times a day. He's a glutton, but he was alone, so he's happy I'm home.
Oh, that's nice.
He's very.
Well, yeah, it's not like Lindor's hitting homers and had the game that Dom Smith had yesterday, which really felt like okay, like that's the bait. Yeah, you see it coming.
He will.
Yeah,
he's coming. He's just taken better. I watched his couple of his swings yesterday. Saw his base hit. He also hit a ball hard at the first baseman, making out, and the swings there. It's before he was out here, too much in front, and now he's back here, and he's making the correction, and he'll get. Don't forget, we had a lot of cold weather, a lot of off days. I mean, they don't need an off day today. They didn't need an off day Monday. They need to play. This team needs to play and get into that engine warm and running in 5th gear. And they're about to get it now. The schedule's not going to start. They're going to start playing games. And they're going to have a lot of games on the road. We'll see how they do. They're playing great at home. 11-4 at home. This was an issue for this team playing at home. They were nervous. That's over with. This team, that ceiling has been shattered.
All right, Haji, I'll wrap it up. I promise. Your dad's back, and I'll let you have a nice little afternoon. Look at him. He's just.
Yeah. He's very happy.
Yeah, he's very happy. All right. Well, a reminder again, please subscribe, rate, and review to the Shea Anything Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate it. And it's brought to you by Verizon. It's It's 5G built right for the Mets from the network more people rely on. Did he just bite you?
Yeah, and he's a little feisty for 18-year-old.
I was about to say he's 18 years old and he's still biting you.
He hasn't got a lot of his teeth left too. He needs some
dentures.
Cool. Yes.
Some veneers. Anyway, Keith, thank you. Always good to talk baseball with you. Enjoy the series this weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon.
I'm looking forward to getting back. And I mean, I got a week off after this. Ronnie's front loaded. I'm back loaded. So I got another week off after the series with Tampa, but I'll be watching. But I'm very anxious to see this team play. I just like what I've been seeing. And
you're going to see Tyler Glasnow pitch. Who's
okay? Is he opening day?
He's a stud for the Rays. Yeah. Yep. Friday night.
Why they play the games? We'll see.
There you go. All right, Keith, Haji, thank you.
All right.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.